Hey guys, today we're going to take a look at the new Ronbus Pulsar FX paddles. It's the replacement for the current Pulsar series by integrating technology introduced in their Nova line along with some new tech of its own. So let's see how they compare to Ronbus's existing offerings. Now the Pulsar FX series will release in three different shapes: the R1, R2, and R3. The R1 and R3 will be familiar to most people, as they are both elongated 16.5 by 7.5 inch paddles with 5.5 inch handles. The only difference is the R1 has a curved top while the R3 is more rectangular shaped, but these are the same molds as the previous Pulsar series. The R2 isn't the same shape as the R2.16, but is instead a standard shaped paddle that's 16 by 8 with a 5.5 inch handle, similar to the Yola Scorpius. As of now, all of these paddles only come in 16mm options. For the swing weights and twist weights, we got 118 and 6.35 for the R1, 114 and 7.00 for the R2, and 122 and 6.30 for the R3. For the construction, these are all thermoform paddles, but with some minor changes, since it's using some of the technology introduced with the Nova, as well as some new tech that's unique to this line. But to talk about this, let's take a step back and quickly go over the tech progression from Ronbus's previous offerings. With the Pulsar, this is one that is a Gen 2 thermoform paddle, so the whole paddle is wrapped in a carbon fiber seam before being placed in a hot mold. The Nova expanded upon this technology by opting to use a carbon fiber edge grid instead of a full carbon fiber seam. The point of this was to release heat and pressure during the thermoforming process in order to help protect the polypropylene core from crushing and being damaged. This created a softer feeling paddle compared to all the other Gen 2 thermoform paddles that were on the market at the time, but also one that was more durable and resistant to core crushing. With the Pulsar FX, Ronbus now does a combination of both. Some areas use a full carbon fiber seam, while other spots have the edge grid integrated. The goal of this was to make the Pulsar FX series not as soft as the Novas, but still retain their durability. Some areas of the grid are also reinforced, so the paddle is meant to play soft on softer shots, but stiffen up when hitting harder ones. In addition, there's a carbon fiber grid under the surface and on top of the honeycomb core, which is intended to provide better dwell time for the ball. Now, given all of that, how did the Pulsar FX paddles actually play? For starters, they have more pop and power than the previous models. In my initial review of the Pulsar, I found that they played a bit soft for a thermoform paddle, and when the Novas came out, they played even softer. Now with the Pulsar FX, Ronbus has created a paddle that leans more towards power that's not only more than their previous models, but I think they're up there for thermoform paddles in general. While Ronbus does claim that the construction allows for the paddle to be more plush on softer shots and stiffen up on harder swings, I do think this is the case, though it's a very subtle difference. All three felt nice to hit drops with, despite having above average power and pop. But that said, the difference is pretty small, and you really have to look for that change. As for the edge grid beneath the surface, I didn't find it to give the ball more dwell time than any of the other Gen 2 paddles. If anything, it may have contributed to the higher pop and power on the paddle instead, but the dwell time for the balls on all shots wasn't anything special. For the three shapes, the order of power from highest to lowest goes R3, R1, and then R2. And then for the speed, the quickest is the R2, followed by the R1, and then the R3. The R2 is the most stable, with the widest sweet spot from its high twist weight. The R1 and R3 weren't too different from each other. I think the R3 had the best vertical sweet spot and reach, but like I said earlier, this came at the cost of it being slower to swing and having the lowest twist weight. The spin is about the same on all three, and I think all of them provide more spin than both the Novas and the Pulsars. Out of the three, I think the R2 is the most exciting one. The Gen 2 market already has several elongated paddles, and the R1 and R3 Pulsar FX models aren't too different from them to really stand out. As for the R2, the only other Gen 2 paddles in that shape I'm aware of are the Yola Scorpius and the Sword & Shield J3. While the Scorpius 16mm and J3 play pretty similar and are considered beginner-friendly paddles that make drops and resets easy, the R2 is just a step above in pop and power, so it gives you a bit more offensive capabilities without having going down to a 14mm option. Overall, Ronbus Pulsar FX series is solid, but they aren't that much different compared to what already exists on the Gen 2 market. I do think that it's Ronbus's best paddle right now, since it introduces more power to their paddles without having to sacrifice durability. I know that many companies these days have taken their own steps to remediating the core crushing issue that has plagued the Gen 2 market, but I do appreciate how upfront Ronbus has been with all the steps they've taken. I do like all three of these paddles and wouldn't have any issues using any one of them. Of the three, I like the R1 shape the best, but like I mentioned earlier, the R2 I found to be the most unique in the market. While the FX series does introduce better durability into the Gen 2 market, in terms of playability, there isn't too much of a difference. But if you are a fan of Ronbus and are looking for a more powerful Gen 2 paddle that has great quality control and durability, the FX series would be one to consider. If you do want to pick one up, I've added my discount code here and a link for you to buy these from the Ronbus website.
Let go.